It's Halloween, a perfect night for the Batman. He could use it to build on his Creature of the Night persona, or maybe face one of his main villains in a Halloween-themed crime, or hunt a zombie in a story that gets real confusing. On this Halloween episode of Moving Panels, we discuss an episode of the Batman, Grundy's Night. Welcome to Moving Panels, the podcast where we discuss movies and TV shows based on, inspired by, and adapted from the world of comic books. I'm your host, Laramy Wells, and joining me today on this spooktacular episode is none other than Bat fan himself, Blake Fowler.
Laramy, unlike Solomon Grundy, I was born on a Wednesday, but just like Solomon Grundy, I am a zombie during the work week, so pretty cool.
Okay. You know what? Let me ask you this. Did you know that this was an actual nursery rhyme before?
Yes. Now, look, the only reason I knew that is, a small side note here, The Accountant with Ben Affleck. Watched The Accountant, and he obviously, as a child, his character quotes the Solomon Grundy nursery rhyme, which, also, a little trivia, a lot of that was filmed in and around near y'all, correct?
Oh, I don't know. I'm sure it was.
The Accountant, I think you can actually go visit that house, but neither here nor there. But yeah, when he started quoting it in that movie, I decided to go say, well, let me see what this is all about. And sure enough, it's an actual children's quote-unquote nursery rhyme.
Yeah, but you didn't know about it, like, until years
after
Right,
years after I knew the character, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was, and we will obviously talk about this comic a little bit, when I first found it out was when I read The Long Halloween.
Okay.
Isn't that the one where most of it is actually said in?
Yeah, he and Grundy and Two-Face team up, and like Grundy's just quoting it throughout the whole comic. And so
I know he constantly says born on a Monday, on a Monday.
But he does the whole thing, I think.
Yeah, I thought that was the case. Okay. Yeah. Well, let's get into this. So we're talking about an episode of The Batman, which was a television series that originally aired on the now defunct WB network as part of their Kids WB.
So long.
Yeah, it didn't stay on there, though. It moved to Cartoon Network.
Right.
And that was before WB kind of dissolved into CW. But this episode aired, based on the math, it actually aired on Cartoon Network on August 27th. Let me say that again. August 27th Halloween episode.
I didn't realize they had moved Halloween. That was very confusing. The first confusing thing about this.
Yeah. It didn't make a lot of sense to me either. But this was 2005. This was the 11th episode of the second season. Since you're a big Batman fan, what are your thoughts on this series, The Batman?
Okay, so I made a few notes because in 2005, I'm a senior in high school. And despite the fact that I am a senior in high school trying to make friends and be popular, I'm watching this series as a 17-year-old, right? No problem. Thank you for supporting me in this Comics Anonymous support group. So I really like, for what it is, I really like the animation. I do enjoy the show, again, for what it is. It is more geared towards kids than, let's say, Batman the Animated Series was. I even really like the opening credits to this show. It's not as good as BTAS, but still good. Overall, it's an enjoyable watch to put on the background. If I'm watching Batman the Animated Series, I'm sitting focused on it. This show is more in the background playing.
Okay, I can see that. Yeah, this was one I remember when it came out. I was actually already graduated from college.
Okay.
By the time this show aired. But again, I'm still watching it.
There you go. I feel better now.
Yeah, and I don't remember an awful lot about it. I remember a lot of different looks for a lot of the characters, especially like Joker. Right. He had like the really long sleeves and the
Rastafarian
crazy hair.
Yeah.
And just like a really long jaw.
Yeah. Well, everybody's like real scrawny. It feels like even Solomon Grundy is like a real
we're going to talk about that look.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Sorry. Jumping ahead.
No.
My bad.
No, you're fine. You're fine. I do have some stuff. So let's just go ahead and jump into it. The only character we're going to focus on is Solomon Grundy. There's really no other characters. I mean, we've done Batman several times. Alfred's in it some, but not enough to really have to talk about. So we're just going to talk about Solomon Grundy.
Fair.
So Solomon Grundy first appeared in All-American Comics number 61 back in October of 1944, so he's been around for quite a while. But he was not originally a Batman villain, as he's more associated with. Are you aware of who he was the villain of?
If I'm not mistaken, Laramy, it's Green Lantern.
And it's not just Green Lantern. Which Green Lantern?
Oh, see, I can't tell you that one. You're going to have to lead me into that one.
Well, think 1944, so it was Alan Scott's Green Lantern.
Yikes. Throwback Thursday, a little bit there. I don't know that I've heard the name Alan Scott associated with the Green Lantern in quite some time.
Yep, so this is not the Green Lantern Corps Green Lantern. This is the Green Lantern before they even made the whole Green Lantern Corps and had to retcon him for it to make sense as to how he was a Green Lantern, but also wore a red suit with a green cape and yeah.
Hey,
so
you make the green work however you can, okay? Christmas colors and all.
Yeah, but we're not talking about Alan Scott. Let's get back to Solomon Grundy. Of course, more people are probably going to recognize Solomon Grundy for reaching fandom as a member of the Legion of Doom in the Super Friends cartoon. Classic Saturday morning cartoon there, where he was voiced by Jimmy Weldon, and who gave him a very distinct Southern accent.
Right up my alley, actually. If had I been alive then, I would have auditioned for that particular role.
What were your thoughts of that version of Solomon Grundy?
I prefer that one to this one. I'll leave it at that. It's not my favorite version of Solomon Grundy, but I certainly prefer that particular iteration to
just
this
more
one.
of he's just he's literally kind of just a dead man, pale.
Yeah. Right.
Nothing special about him other than he's apparently a zombie.
Nothing at all. And again, I've got some stuff that I want to talk about once we get into the episode that'll kind of explain my reasoning for that particular opinion, but I'll leave that for in just a minute.
They, of course, as they did with most characters after the Crisis on Infinite Earths in the 80s, post-crisis as they call it, they reintroduced Solomon Grundy in Batman The Long Halloween. That was actually his introduction back after post-crisis. And this is where we get the big, hulkish Solomon Grundy that maybe our younger listeners are more familiar with.
Maybe not even just familiar with, but maybe they prefer. For me, I don't consider myself a younger listener or co-host here, but I prefer that big, hulking Solomon Grundy.
I do too. I definitely do. I don't know if it's because I'm also a big fan of the Hulk.
Okay.
And so that kind of makes him DC's version of the Hulk.
Right.
But no, I am a big fan of the big hulking, unstoppable, indestructible Solomon Grundy.
Right. Yeah. And I think you've already got a not necessarily thin, but a spindly creature from the swamp per se in Swamp Thing. I don't need another thin zombie-like creature rising from the muck. I want this big hulking version who, again, as you said, is an unstoppable force in a lot of ways.
Well, let's actually talk a little bit about why you think that about him and Swamp Thing. So the origin of Swamp Thing, as with most characters that have been around as long as he has, it varies throughout time. Now, the most common origin of Solomon Grundy is that he was a merchant by the name of Cyrus Gold. This was right at the turn of the century, late 19th century, 1895 or so. And he is murdered, and there's a couple of different variations as to why he's murdered, but he's murdered. His body is disposed of in Slaughter Swamp, which of course they changed to Gotham Swamp in this episode.
Yeah.
And then 50.
I don't know if they really wanted to put Slaughter Swamp in the kids show. Could have been there, yeah. So.
Oh yeah, we'll talk about a little bit of that too.
Yeah, sorry.
He's 50 years later. His body is reanimated, and his body is composed of swamp material. So again, I see your connection there with Swamp Thing. It goes a little bit further. There's another origin in which he's killed by the pimp of a prostitute. It's still Cyrus Gold, it's still merchant, still the turn of the century, but this time he's killed by the pimp of a prostitute. What happened is the pimp is trying to blackmail him, claiming that he is the father of the prostitute's unborn child. He refuses, of course, denies it, refuses to pay, and so the pimp beats him to death and then throws him into the swamp, and then same issue there. There's another one that even connects him more to Swamp Thing, and that is one that deals with the Parliament of Trees. Are you familiar with the Parliament of Trees in DC Universe?
Laramy, I am not, but I'm hopeful you're about to educate me.
So the Parliament of Trees are the elder plant elementals.
Okay.
So they are kind of the presiding over who is the current plant elemental. So we're getting into our little thing there. They're the ones, of course, that helped create Swamp Thing.
Okay.
They are connected to the green, all
right.
that
Okay, I'm
aspect.
familiar with the green, yeah.
Yeah. And so what happens is when Cyrus is murdered, when he's killed, they turn him into a plant elemental. So this is supposed to be before Swamp Thing.
Okay.
They're trying to turn him into the current plant elemental. But the problem is that whoever becomes the plant elemental is supposed to have been killed by fire. And since Cyrus Gold was not killed by fire, it doesn't quite go as planned. It doesn't work entirely correct. And so that is why... Yeah, so that is why he is more of this kind of brain-dead zombie.
Yeah, almost, I don't know how familiar you are with, like, folklore and stuff, but he's almost a revenant of sorts as opposed to a zombie kind of thing. That's at least that's what I think of when I think of traditional, quote-unquote, my Solomon Grundy.
Well, and there's been, throughout the comics, I got another origin to give you, but throughout the comics, there's been this thing about how Solomon Grundy can be killed, but he eventually will come back.
Yeah.
And when he comes back, he may have a different personality, and he may have different abilities.
Okay.
There's even one time where he gets launched into space.
Yeah, there's a confusing thing with his Earth 1, Earth 2 origins.
Yeah.
Like he's gone through a lot, and I am a little nerdy about Grundy because he's probably one of, if not my favorite Batman villains. I'm a big fan of the spooky time stuff.
Over the Joker?
Even over the Joker, who has just been, just beaten to death at this point in time in pop culture. I still like the Joker, but Grundy,
Condiment King? Yeah.
we'll get there in another episode, okay? But no, I wish Grundy had some more airtime, so to speak.
But yeah, so
launched into space. Yeah, he's got some weird stuff.
Yeah, because he's launched into space, then you never hear about that again. Then he's back on Earth, and then he's killed on Earth, and then someone ends up finding out that he's back in space, and it's apparently when he died on Earth, the space version of him came back to life. And, it does get confusing.
It's wild. But don't worry, DC Rebirth fixed all of that, okay? We're just retconning everything in the comics.
No, it didn't. All right. The last kind of origin is one of the more confusing ones. The 7 Unknown Men of Slaughter Swamp. Are you familiar with them?
I mean, Laramy, who doesn't know about the Snow White and 7 Men of Slaughter? Sorry, 7 Dwarves of Slaughter. Not the same thing?
So the 7 Unknown Men of Slaughter Swamp are characters that many people believe were DC writers who put themselves into the comics. As godlike creators or characters who made sure that the continuity of the universe was intact. So in other words, they're DC's version of the Timekeepers from Marvel.
I was just going to ask, are there any copyright infringements that have gone on at this point in time with that?
Using different names. They're getting away with it.
Sure, okay, yeah.
So what happens is one of their members becomes evil, which part of me also went, wait a minute, they did this exact same storyline with the Guardians. So one of their members becomes evil, and get ready, there's another tie-in here.
Okay.
And his name is Zor.
Stop.
Not Zod. We're just going to change one letter.
Stop.
Let's make him Zor. And, okay, so... And in this story, so Cyrus Gold actually exists. And in this one, they make him again, still turn of the century, but they make him a pedophile, and he's being chased down by a mob. So in this one, Cyrus Gold is Freddy Krueger. And then Cyrus Gold goes to hide, and the 7 unknown men decide to dress up. They get a hold of Zor, and they dress him up to look like Cyrus Gold so that the mob will see him and then kill him. And so in this version of the story, Zor, who they think is Cyrus Gold, is the one who becomes the original Solomon Grundy.
All right, look, I know we're in the middle of recording, but I'm going to take a break and process all of this. I'll talk to my therapist as well.
You'll need an aspirin after that one.
I have a lot of feelings all of a sudden.
But I just wanted to get into that because all of this wonderful and confusing stuff now leads us back into this show.
Full circle.
In this show, Solomon Grundy was voiced by Kevin Graveau. For those of you who are big fans of the Underworld movies, Kevin Graveau was Ray's, the big, hulkish, almost looking bald black guy that's in all of the movies. Mm-hmm. So I was kind of impressed by that because I'm an Underworld fan. So we talked about this a little bit. So his look in this show, you and I have both said we like the hulking look. Mm-hmm. And I think you've already said, but I'll just ask you again. Were you a fan of this look?
Not at all. Not in the slightest. Again, it's just... It was too scarecrowish. Like he's just very spindly, very just lanky. Yeah, I didn't care for it. With the comb over on top too. I didn't like that. Yeah.
Now, with you being the big Batman fan, are you familiar with the Shadow of the Bat storyline?
Yeah, the storyline, the comic book storyline. Yeah.
Yeah. Now you know that's the look. It's the same look.
Right.
I mean, the hair's a little different.
It is. Yeah.
But the bigger upper body and then almost no middle section. I get that they were trying to maybe look more like a skeleton. You know, the fact that he wouldn't have any guts, and so it would just be ribs, and then all of a sudden a spine and hip.
Yeah, even at that, even if that's the look you're going for, there's still ways to have that classic, so to speak, Grundy look. And maybe it's just the hair and the face for me was just so bad that even you couldn't even get
dead on. It was very scarecrow looking.
Yeah. So, and no, not a fan. I wish they'd have done a little more. And kind of leading into that, I don't like for someone who says so little, he talks too much in this episode.
He does. Well, but
he says
there's a reason for that.
Yeah. And I don't want to spoil too early in the spoiler
we'll get into it.
Show. But yeah, he again doesn't say a whole lot, but still says way too much.
Yeah, I will give this look one positive.
Okay,
is with this look when he does, and again, this is where we walk a line because of the reveal in this episode. But with this look of Grundy, it does make it more impressive when he is all of a sudden super strong.
Yeah.
You know, when he does something, it makes it look more supernatural that someone who looks like the way he looks in this cartoon is able to do some of the stuff he does.
Yeah, and obviously if you haven't seen this episode yet, they lean heavy into the supernatural aspect for the first, 2/3 of this. And so it does appear much more... Again, after otherworldly, that he's being able to throw Batman around and destroy things the way he is, as scrawny as he appears.
Hello, movie viewers and fellow movie lovers. My name is Tim Williams, and I'm the creator and host of Movie Views Presents the 80s Flick Flashback Podcast. See, I love the 80s, and I have a great appreciation and nostalgic passion for the classic 80s flicks that birthed my love for movies and ultimately helped shape my childhood. On each episode, I'll discuss, with a special guest co-host of course, a different film from the 1980s. We'll share memories, favorite characters, iconic scenes, and even share some behind-the-scenes stories along the way. We'll discuss famous blockbusters like Raiders of the Lost Ark, Coming to America, Ghostbusters, Dirty Dancing, Top Gun, Die Hard, and many, many more. As well as some other cult classics and even lesser-known flicks we discovered on cable TV or the now-defunct video rental stores. Remember those? No matter what 80s flick we choose to talk about, we'll always have a good time, so come and check us out. You can find the 80s Flick Flashback podcast on major podcasting platforms like Apple Podcast, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Anchor, and more. Be sure to subscribe or follow so you don't miss a single episode. Once again, I'm Tim Williams, and I hope you'll join me for the next 80s Flick Flashback.
All right, so let's get into the moving panels. Now, obviously, there's not a direct comic book connection here. There's no storyline that they adapted for this episode, so we're just really going to talk about the episode as a whole and how it works as a story in itself. I will say the opening was great. I loved the opening.
Yeah, agreed.
I love the opening. It's a great setup by showing us it's Halloween. We get the two, I thought they were twins, but then later you kind of see that they're just sisters that look very similar. You talked about earlier with this being a kid's show, they clearly could not use the words death or kill or murder. So they're just talking about that
he's coming for us.
Coming for them.
Yeah.
He's going to ruin them, I think was another.
Yep.
Going to ruin them. But then I did have a problem with, was Grundy in this case like he was just created from nothing?
Yeah, so that's one of the things the problems I have with this episode is the Grundy origin story. Didn't particularly care for it. In most of the other origin stories, he, is Cyrus Gold, but I didn't like how the episode gave him this, creation from a cult, essentially.
Yeah.
Didn't care for that. That didn't work for me in the episode.
What did you think about the story, though? That he was kind of a minion of evil who is just there to like he's got a goal is to haunt the. It kind of reminded me of the movie The Fog.
Okay.
Are you familiar with The Fog?
It's vaguely, but I do remember the plot of it, and I can see how you could tie that into it. Solomon Grundy for me. Okay, I understand he's a villain, but at times he's anti-hero-ish. There are some things he's done in the comics that have been virtuous. So I don't like that. It really doesn't work for me that he's just this mindless creation of the muck, and he's just doing the bidding of this group of Eastern European settlers who had their lake taken from them. No,
I agree. I want my Solomon Grundy to be sentient.
Yeah,
I want him. Which of course then they kind of reveal that he can think for himself and all that, but that's leading to somewhere else.
Yeah, I don't want to spoil it yet, Laramy. I'm waiting for the right moment.
Let's get into the Halloween setting.
Okay.
So, again, this is supposed to be a Halloween episode. It starts off with some trick-or-treaters. We then get the opening. Then we get some more trick-or-treaters, and I want to talk about those trick-or-treaters really quick.
Yeah. Go. No, I love the irony of those trick-or-treaters.
Yeah. So they're dressed like villains. There's Joker, Catwoman, and Penguin. And they make a joke about it where Bruce even says, they think these kids think villains are cooler than
they like
the hero.
It's cool to be the bad guys. Yeah.
And I'm going, yeah, that makes sense when they're fictional characters.
Yeah.
But these kids and that dad are living in a world
where
these characters actually exist and are criminals,
murdering people.
Yeah, they're terrorists. Again, they don't murder in this show, but we can at least say they're terrorists.
Sorry, they're ruining people.
Yeah, and he seems all cool with, hey, look at that, we're gonna dress up as these psychopaths.
Yeah, I mean, that's like a child right now going up to the parent and be like, hey, I'm thinking about being John Wayne Gacy for Halloween. I'd like to dress up as a clown as John Wayne Gacy. Yeah, it blew my mind. And Dad's standing there in his Solomon Grundy outfit also.
But that one makes a little bit more sense.
Because it is supernatural. I get that.
And also the Solomon Grundy is supposed to be like an urban legend.
Right.
So as far as they know, he's not actually real. So that one made a little bit more sense.
Yeah.
But
meanwhile,
the
penguin is putting cement boots on people and drowning them in Gotham Swamp, and this kid's dressed up as Penguin. Yeah. That was a little weird.
Yeah, that was my. I just was like, oh, really?
I did like Alfred dressing up as Sherlock Holmes, though. I enjoyed, Alfred as the Sir Arthur Conan Doyle figure. That was pretty neat to see. I wish it had been Jim Gordon, though, as commissioner, but neither here nor there, I suppose.
Yeah, the dressing up as the greatest detective with the world's greatest detective.
With the world's greatest detective in the house. Now, I will say this, Laramy. A cringeworthy moment for me is Bruce saying, "What would Halloween be without me getting to wear my costume?" I was like, ugh, could have done without that line. Really didn't care for that.
And then what about the stupid trope of someone running into him and thinking he's just another dude wearing a Batman costume?
You're Batman. Of course, again, try not to spoil. Was that not the actual Solomon Grundy villain?
Yeah. We'll get to that in a hurry. We'll get to that in a hurry. I want to hit going back to Alfred. Here's a problem I had with Alfred.
Yeah.
Why is he so afraid of the Solomon Grundy story?
Terrified. This dude has watched a real live grown man battle all kinds of creatures and villains and overcome all kinds of odds, and he's worried about a character from an Are You Afraid of the Dark episode, for those of you familiar with Nickelodeon. That's that
and
bothered me.
For the younger audience, Goosebumps.
Yeah, that really bothered me.
Yeah, because he's usually the one that, like, he could go face to face with the Joker and not flinch.
Yeah.
The Joker would get up in his face and he wouldn't flinch.
Right.
But yet someone mentions Solomon Grundy and he, almost shrieks.
Yeah. Alfred's like throwing salt over his shoulder every time the name Solomon Grundy's mentioned. Didn't really fit, yeah. And
then, why doesn't Bruce think that it's real? The man has dealt with supernatural, superpowered beings before.
He's best friends with an alien, but this can't be supernatural. It can't be real. And I'm assuming in this show, again, I haven't watched the whole series, just to be clear, but I would assume at some point in time he deals with John Constantine. I think I've seen him in some of the clips for this show.
Remember,
so he's aware the supernatural world exists, at least.
He fought Dracula.
Yeah. Which is a great episode of the Batman, by the way. A little movie, but still.
Yeah, now, technically, the Batman vs. Dracula movie came out after this episode.
Right.
But honestly, I'm like, but technically it came out in October, so it was before Halloween. So if you really take the setting of this episode, it should come after he battled Dracula.
Stop messing with the timeline, Laramy.
Yeah, he fought Dracula, but he refuses to believe that a zombie could exist.
A lot of plot holes going on.
But again, back to the Halloween feel. I think the show lost some of the Halloween feel in the middle.
Yeah.
So it starts off strong with the trick-or-treaters, it then completely disappears, could be happening on any random night.
Any night.
However, I think it then pulls it back at the end when they enter the wax museum.
But only because they have a jack-o'-lantern as their neon sign, I feel like. If you had just cut to the wax museum with no jack-o'-lantern up top, do you still realize it's Halloween?
That's a good point.
Which is frustrating. Yeah. I wish, and it's kind of jumping ahead, I wish they'd have spent more time in and on the wax museum setting. There could have been so much done in that setting. Yeah. With this particular story and the reveal of the end there. You could have done a whole lot more with the wax museum. I wish that would have happened. A lot more villains could have been brought in. Villains, quote unquote.
Or at least have it where the wax museum is like a haunted house type setting where there's
absolutely.
There's a werewolf display, there's a Dracula display, maybe tie it a little bit more into it. But overall, watching this episode, because this is one thing I want to talk about. Watching this episode, did it feel like it was a Halloween episode?
Not like you said after the first 10 minutes.
Yeah. It just felt like a regular episode.
I'll tell you what it feels like, Laramy. It felt like I was watching a Scooby-Doo episode. That's what I felt like I was watching.
Except this time, let's go ahead and jump into this.
This time
when they quote unquote take the mask off, it's a whole other villain.
Dun, dun, dun.
So this episode, it is not Solomon Grundy at all. It's Clayface making himself look like the urban legend Solomon Grundy.
And he'd have gotten away with it if it weren't for those meddling kids. Now, look, to be fair, Laramy, I love Scooby-Doo. Like the original Scooby-Doo.
Yes, but I hate Clayface.
Yeah, so that's going to be my next point. Like, if this had been a Scooby-Doo episode, cool, great. But the fact this is Batman and you just decided to make it Clayface, it feels cheap. I feel a little ripped off.
The only version of Clayface I like is from the Harley Quinn cartoon.
Oh, I do enjoy that Clayface.
That's the only Clayface I like.
It's a good Clayface. He's very well read.
Yeah, I didn't like Clayface in the animated series either. I was never a fan of Clayface. But yeah, so it turns out to be Clayface, which explains why Solomon talks so much. Mm-hmm. Also, is the way they explain why Solomon Grundy is not only destroying their houses, but he's also stealing from them. And then, of course, it pays off when they go to the Wax Museum because Clayface is able to take any form he wants inside of it. But here was my problem. Once it's revealed that it's Clayface, which we'll go back and say we end up finding out he was the guy who came up on Batman saying, "Oh, dude, you're in a Batman costume."
Right.
Once it's revealed that it's Clayface, why does he keep the Solomon Grundy persona?
Yeah, that really bothered me. Like, just drop it immediately. And I think eventually he does drop it towards right at the end of the episode. But
yeah, before he gets
waxed.
Encased and waxed. Yeah.
But it really bothers me that he keeps up the Grundy facade. Batman's figured it out, as he always does, with the mud on his cape. That's
the one little bit of detective work he actually does.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So he figures it out. Just drop it.
Yeah.
Again, it's just it feels so lazy on the part of the writers of this particular episode to A, make it be Clayface, and then B, just keep the Clayface thing up. We get it. You're beating a dead horse. He can shapeshift. Cool. Like, just let him be Clayface, which also, I hate this Clayface design. I know you don't like Clayface in general, but this Clayface design is bad also.
Where he just looks like a melted G.I. Joe?
Yeah, he looks like a... Laramy, I think we need to talk about your proclivity for melting G.I. Joes later. That's at another time. But yeah, again, melted putty. I don't know. It's not clay.
Because you're calling the episode Grundy's Night. You're centering everything about almost as this was going to be our introduction to Solomon Grundy for this series.
Yep.
And then you just
pull the rug out.
The rug out of everybody. Yeah. Pull the rug out from everybody, and hey, it's Clayface. Surprise! And
because you almost, it's kind of jumping to the very end here, you almost got to the point where you can't bring in Solomon Grundy again, but I did like they left a little cliffhanger at the end. The swamp's bubbling. Is it going to be Grundy? Is it not? Now, so for those of you that don't know, I'm hard of hearing, so I watch everything with captions on. The captions do say at the end, Grundy grunting, as the swamp is bumbling. So I think the implication is that it is actually Solomon Grundy.
Well, I'm sure, because they have to
keep that open. You got to keep that open.
Since Grundy exists in the comics, we got to still say that he possibly still exists here, but I just think they ruined it. I just absolutely think they ruined it.
I don't know that I would have cared to see Solomon Grundy come back after that episode.
Or it wouldn't have been that big of a deal when he does. And honestly, I didn't look to see if he ever did show back up.
You would just think it's Clayface again. Here goes Clayface trying to pull the Solomon Grundy trick again.
Yeah, it just took some of the shine out of that villain, who both of us have already stated we're a big fan of.
Yeah.
I think that gets us into our final decision. So let's go ahead and tackle that. Bag it, stack it, or trade it. So with all of what we've said, let's see where you stand there, Blake.
Laramy, I can't really remember. I'd have to go back and listen to my other episodes, but I think I'm going to make a bit of moving panels history here and say trade it.
I do think it's the first time you've ever done that.
I'm ready to get rid of this. I remember, again, I watched it probably when it came out in 2005, probably rose-colored glasses, thinking back on it and being excited to watch it again. And I watch it now, and I just think it's cheap, it's lazy. It is not a Halloween episode except for the first little bit, and I can certainly do without ever watching it again.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I actually had to rewind at one point in this episode because I fell asleep.
Oh, big yikes. Okay.
I fell asleep watching it. I wanted a Grundy story. Mm-hmm. I wanted a Grundy story. I'm okay with it not being the hulkish Grundy, that both of us have said we're a fan of. I'm
Right.
fine with that.
Yeah.
But I want a Grundy story.
Yeah, I agree. I love Halloween. It's my favorite holiday.
And that's the other thing. I wanted a Halloween episode.
Halloween episode with Grundy. Sure, I'm right there with you.
I mean, if you're not going to give me an episode that actually matters that it's happening during Halloween, then don't make it the Halloween episode.
Just make it an episode. A normal, regular episode.
Yeah, I'd rather you give me an episode with the Riddler who's, dealing with, his version of trick-or-treating.
Oh, that'd be very cool. Yeah, no, I'm totally in for that.
Yeah, that his victims, or the people he goes after, whatever, they open their door on Halloween night only to find a little gadget or whatnot that reveals some sort of riddle
right
that they have to solve, or a bomb's going to explode.
They get it wrong.
Like that.
They get it wrong, and it's a trick. They get it right. It's a treat. So he could certainly play off that aspect.
Kind of like like a jigsaw type. I know that's getting real dark for this show.
Just a little bit.
If you can
right
solve the riddle, you survive, and if you can't solve the riddle, then something bad's going to happen.
I'm doing a verbal trademark on this idea right now for anybody listening. This idea has been trademarked.
Copyright Moving Panels.
There you go.
2021.
That's right. Thank you.
So there you go. but yeah, it's a trade it. Again, this is a show that I don't think either one of us really have a fond memories of, I should say.
Yeah.
I'm not saying there aren't some good episodes. Maybe we'll hit some more in the future. And this might be a short episode for us, but we're talking about a 30-minute show that had a 15-minute story.
Yeah, that's seriously, and it's 100% correct. This could have been done in 12 to 15 minutes and been one of those TV shows where you have 2 episodes in the 30-minute time slot. It could have been that way, easily.
Yeah, it could have been a Batman the Brave and the Bold episode.
Oh, there you go. Now, that's one we need to get into sometime.
Well, that'll be for another day. But thanks, everybody, for watching, and we hope you have a great Halloween this year. Blake and I will come back. We might actually come back for the Christmas episode and do a better Batman animated series episode.
I already know what you're talking about. Can't wait.
Yeah. So we'll come back and do that. But for today, we hope you still enjoy the show, even though this wasn't a very fun episode to talk about. But please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. Follow us on social media. We're at Moving Panels on just about every platform. And for today, for this spooktacular episode, I'm Laramy Wells for Moving Panels, and I'll see you on the other side of the page.